New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 707 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I have another great episode lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest today is Emilia D'Anzica. Emilia is partner for customer success and account management at Winning by Design. And today, Emilia and I are going to talk about customer success, how CS, as it's known, has become a driving force in revenue growth in the SaaS industry, and how this model will soon become applicable to many other industries and businesses as well. We'll get into the evolving role of customer success, how it's structured, where it reports, and how success is measured for customer success. Now, before we get to Emilia, I want to take a quick second to talk to you about the Sales House, the sales accelerator community for B2B sellers. You know, as sellers, we don't have a ton of control over a lot of the things that have an impact on our job. We can't control products, pricing, features, customers, and so on. But what we can control is how we as individuals conduct ourselves in front of our buyers. All those other factors pale in importance to how we connect, how we build rapport, how we engage the interest of our buyers, how we build trust, and how we deliver the value that inspires them to want to do business with us. And that's the focus at the Sales House, to enable sellers just like you with all the knowledge, skills, confidence, and acumen to become the very best version of you. And I've been in sales for more than 4 decades, and like you, have seen plenty of people pushing empty promises about how to get better. But if you just invest 10 minutes a day of your time in the Sales House for an entire year, I guarantee you'll never have to worry about hitting quota ever again. You get unlimited access to courses, coaching, content, and a community of motivated peers who know that to learn more means to earn more. So come be the best version of you at the Sales House. Visit thesaleshouse.com. That is thesaleshouse.com/join. Look forward to seeing you there. All right, let's jump into it with my guest today, Emilia D'Anzica. Emilia, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing great. I am doing well. So as we record this, we're both taking shelter from the huge storms hitting California. You on the northern side, me on the southern side. And so if people hear in the background, hear drops of rain pounding against the window, there's nothing we could do about it. So you have to bear with us. So we're going to talk about customer success today. And this is a topic that everybody hears about, but it's certainly within the SaaS business, the software business, it's really sort of taken off as a driving force of revenue growth within the companies. Perhaps less so in other companies, but it's something that I think companies should learn about because it's applicable, I think, more broadly than many firms think about. So, and Phil said it could be a good tool for driving revenue growth for them. So, tell us, what's the mission of customer success?
Customer success, I believe, as a mission is to continue a growth loop for sales. So it isn't an extension, but rather a partner of the sales team. They work hand in hand to continue to grow that customer relationship. I don't think one is more important than the other. I don't believe that customer success should necessarily report into sales, but I can understand in some organizations that is the way it is. But really, at the end of the day, if you really go down to the basics, the mission of customer success is to enable a customer and for that partnership with the customer to grow. So it's really a growth loop if you think of a customer journey.
Yeah, when you talk about enabling the customer to grow, it's say, okay, once they have your product, your service, your software on board in the company, that's just the beginning of the journey. And if they don't get the value out of it, then they don't stay a customer. I mean, pretty simple from a software standpoint. I mean, the barriers to change are much lower than they used to be in the SaaS world, and certainly in a licensed hosted environment. So really paying attention that people are using it and using it productively, is really essential.
Yes, and I believe that customer success is so relevant and important that it's no longer a SaaS term. Companies, you think of WeWork, for example, while they service tech companies, non-tech companies, they now have a vice president of customer success, and they realize the value of it. So the woman who's heading up the organization is hiring an entire team globally because WeWork has recognized the value of customer success and servicing the people who are leveraging their offices.
And that's really the point, as we were making before, is
Yes.
Yeah, this is not something that's just, I mean, certainly, actually, I'll probably get into this later. I spent 2 or 3 years in a customer success role. It wasn't called that at the time, but that's exactly what it was. Yeah, it wasn't a tech business, but it was such a central role in the company that it really had outsized importance. And I think that's something that companies really sort of don't spend enough time thinking about, is they think, yeah, if we sell it, that's sort of it, right? And maybe they'll give us a referral, and if we're lucky, but not enough energy sort of spent on, somebody really getting the value out of this that they expected, they're meeting their expectations when they purchased the product.
And I would argue, and the research that Winning by Design has done shows that if you are able to onboard, have a successful handoff, do the onboarding well, and really grow the customer, the lifetime value of the customer is really after the opportunity is closed. It's not a closed sale, but rather a commitment. And if you look at that commitment, the growth can be 75 to 92% of the lifetime value. If you think of that,
beyond the original value of the initial contract, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you think of that, that's significant for companies. And when you're trying to seek venture funding, for example, you definitely need to be able to show that you have a product that, one, the market is ready for, and two, that you're able to renew and grow those customers.
All right, we'll get into the growth aspect of it in a bit. So let's get back to how it's structured, because you raised the point that a lot of people initially gravitate toward is like, it doesn't report to sales. What are you talking about? So what are the pros and cons of where customer success should report?
I've seen it where I recently worked with a client last week, and the customer success organization did report into sales. And I talked to the head of customer success. She's thrilled that she's reporting into sales because this sales leader has so much influence over the organization, was able to leverage part of the budget for customer success kickoff. And that's where Winning by Design came in and spent a day with the team. and they're able to show the organization and customers that sales and CS are aligned. And that's really powerful. So I see that.
Why wouldn't they be? I mean, given that, so if you look at the two primary functions of a business, and this is not my words, I learned this from somebody else, but it says that's basically to get them and keep them, right? Get customers, keep customers. Get them, keep them. Why wouldn't they be in alignment?
Yeah, you know what? I asked myself the same question. If you look at the average salary of CROs versus the chief customer officers, I would argue that the CROs are more highly compensated. They have more stock options, and they go to the President's Club in Hawaii every year.
And they generate a quarter of the revenue versus 3/4 being generated through customer success.
Exactly. So if you look at the stats, and I know Michael Blisdale is putting together right now a survey and is going to release this research. I just can't wait for it to come out to really see and be able to prove these type of metrics. It's just evident in how organizations are structured, and when companies put aside a budget for how many salespeople they hire versus customer success, I would argue that there's always more money for sales, more money for the sales dinners, more money for the offsites, kickoffs. Now, I will say that's changing. In the past 2 weeks, I've been to 3 sales and customer success kickoffs where Winning by Design was part of the program, and that's really encouraging to me. So I do believe that that's changing. But if you look at the traditional, even companies like Slack, who does customer success report into? It's sales. What does that tell me? It tells me that for some reason, sales is more important than customer success. And
perceived to be more important by the people within the organization, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you could ask the question: is sales disproportionately compensated compared to customer success? And it says someone who's been in that customer success role. Yeah, at the time, I certainly would have argued yes. Though interesting, at that time, in the role I was in, my compensation wasn't a whole lot different than the salespeople in the way the company was structured, because it really was a team approach, right? Customer success played a role in the pre-sale as well as the post-sale, because part of we were selling major account opportunities, is you had to have customer success involved in the pre-sale in order to lay out what expectations are going to be for once you had the order and once you start implementing.
Yes. And again, there's the alignment. It's fantastic if you can afford to bring the customer success manager before the relationship is solidified and onboarding, the handoff starts. That tells me that the company's invested in customer success.
So let's look at the capabilities of the individuals like customer success managers. Yeah, how do they really differ from that of a salesperson? I mean, again, I went into customer success. We called it program management at the time, but I was running these large programs that they're customer success programs. I have a hard time speaking that today. But I came into it from sales, ended up going back into sales, and I came of the opinion away from that. It's like, this should be part of the career track for sales, is they should have to spend, an AE should have to spend, especially in an enterprise environment, should have to spend some portion of their time going through customer success, seeing how the product is used, making the customer successful, because when they come back on the other side, much better prepared for the pre-sale to be able to help the customers make a decision.
And I love that story that you just shared, because I'll share an opposite one. Traditionally, in onboarding of customer success managers, they don't typically spend a lot of time in the sales process or learning what is the sales journey. How does the customer go through awareness and then become a customer? And if companies take the time and invest in customer success managers to learn about the sales journey, I believe they will be better at their jobs They will understand where the customer is coming from. How did they become aware of the product? What were their pain points? And hence the importance of the handoff. But in training, it's critical that you learn those skills or at least understand the sales perspective. How did this customer come to you as now a paying customer? And what's so interesting is I am coaching someone who desperately wants to be in customer success. He has been rejected so many times by companies because, and this may be the excuse, I think he's fantastic, but they said, well, you've never had customer success experience. You're a salesperson. And he's very successful in sales. And so I'm baffled by this because when I was at WalkMe, some of the best CSMs that I hired were sales managers before. They understood the entire journey. So I would argue that people in sales are already equipped to become customer success managers. And I think if I have to hire from a pool, I would start with sales.
Well, I wonder if, in the instances you're talking about where they're resisting hiring salespeople into customer success, I wonder if that's part of the issue is just the perception of what customer success is doing. So, we get a little fixated on this idea of land and expand, and which I think is somewhat of a flawed metaphor for what's really happening. Because to me, the implication of land and expand is, yeah, we're going to get a few customers and we're just going to add more seats, sort of doing the exact same thing. Fine, that's one way to grow an account. But for me, in the business that I was in for years, that was okay. But what we really wanted the next big thing the customer was going to do, right? We just got the order on this big initiative, let's call it Initiative A. We really wanted to get Initiative B. And for me, that was the role that I took on as a program manager, as a customer success manager. I was leading the charge on helping the customer discover their needs, basically go through another sales process.
Exactly.
So for me, it seems strange that they wouldn't want to hire a salesperson because the job fundamentally is the same in many respects. There are aspects of it that are different in terms of managing a relationship. But when it looks at going to getting, I said, the next big opportunity, you're doing a sales job.
I agree. And I think it's Dan Steinman who recently said this, so I'll quote him, but the sale never ends, right? Just because in Salesforce it says opportunity closed doesn't mean anything. It means there's a commitment, there's a partnership. Now the growth opportunity is there if you are able to onboard them and orchestrate a successful adoption of your platform.
Yeah, I think the first I've said that, quote Andy, is that the first, we'll call it customer success call you have with a customer after the order is signed is the first sales call for the next big order. And you really have to have that perspective, right? I mean, yeah, we're there to serve the customer. We want to do right by the customer, want them to get the value out of it. But we're not doing that through a sense of altruism. We do have an agenda. The agenda is we want to make you fabulously successful. So the next thing you need to order, you order from us.
Exactly. Yes, I agree. Those key moments, those critical events where you are looking at the different pain points they have, asking the right questions, and then alleviating them first before really diving really deep in your product, because they may not need all of it at the beginning. Let's ensure their pain points are alleviated first. Yeah,
and that's why I use a different term, and it's not one I originated, but it's, there are other strategies besides land and expand. I mean, one that I worked on a lot is called fit in and stand out. And the reason I think this is actually maybe more apt a lot of times is that when you bring a product into an organization, you have to fit into what they're doing. I mean, yeah, you may be disrupting to some degree their existing processes, but you also need to integrate with the existing processes. You do need to fit in and then show that by fitting in and using your capabilities, you've stood out, right? You've made things, you've elevated everything.
I agree.
If all you're thinking about doing is adding seats, I think your motivations are not going to be headed in the right direction.
I completely agree. The minute you sound like you're selling to them, they're turned off. There's the silence in the relationship.
Yeah. How many seats are we adding this month?
Exactly. Those days are gone.
You'd think, but they're not. I mean, I've sat in, I went to a Modern Sales Pro salon in New York, and I sat at a table with SDR managers and sales managers. No, they were talking about that all the time, right? What are we going to close this month? How am I going to get some more this month? What are the discounts we're going to give? I'm like, are you guys listening to yourself? I mean, the pattern of behavior that they had given no thought to. Does this help us reach our long-term objective? And what are we doing to the relationship in the meantime? By, hey, I'm going to give you, a 2% discount to, give us additional seats this month. It's like, really?
And I would argue that you don't need to give discounts. Why not? Why not trade?
Trade what?
Well, it depends on what is really important to your company at the time. So if you're a Series A company and you don't have customer references or case studies or videos, why not do a trade? If they want to have the same price as last year, sure, we'll extend it for another year, but within the first 60 days of us renewing, we would like to be able to do a video and case study. Or if we keep this price, then we would like 3 introductions to past colleagues or people that can benefit from our product. That can be a far better conversation when it comes to the renewal than just giving a discount.
Oh, I agree 100%. And companies tend not to think about that so much. So you said something that triggered a thought is, so how are companies measuring both at the sort of group level and individual level customer success?
I do believe that the renewals and expansion are the most important metrics that companies are looking at. After all, if you can't renew, then do you need to go back to your product and look at, is it something related to product? Were they bad fit customers? What happened in the customer journey, and why are you now only realizing it at time of renewal? So it's a fundamental problem there. But I also do believe that more and more things like references, introductions to other potential customers, speaking at conferences on your company's behalf, videos, those kind of things are now also being looked at as motivational targets or metrics for CSMs to look at. So, for example, Gainsight, every quarter, every CSM, as part of their bonus program, is to have at least one case study. So every company does it differently. That's on an individual level. At WalkMe, for example, the CSMs were motivated and incentivized by pods, so as groups. And I love that philosophy, because if you think about it, if there's someone weak on your team, you want to help them, you want to elevate them. And so as a group, you get stronger instead of just having these key stars on your team. You can't grow a company as quickly with just a few strong salespeople or a few strong CSMs. You need to elevate the entire organization to scale faster.
Well, let's get back to a point you made before. You talked about sort of being surprised whether they renew or not renew. So what are the sort of interim metrics that you'd look at to say, okay, are we on track to renew?
Yeah.
Right. What's going on? And that can be a little more difficult sometimes to assess, but I'm wondering what you see companies doing in that regard.
What I have found is highly effective is having the decision maker, the executive champion on the kickoff call and really understanding their goals for why they purchased your product, and then having them on the executive check-in after they go live, showing them what's been completed and understanding their goals for the next quarter. and doing that on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be quarterly. I recognize that these executives are hard to get on the phone, and it doesn't have to be an hour call. It can be, let's have a 30-minute executive check-in, and we'd like your executive to be on for the first 15 minutes to show them where we've been and where we're headed. And if we're able to do that and constantly understand the company's goals and what they care about, asking the right questions, then we can be a partner and help them leverage our products or our platforms in a way that will benefit their company. You always want to make sure that the customer is the hero in this journey.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one of the ways that's really important. If you just bring the executive in for the renewal call, you may have totally missed the mark in the customer journey. And I've seen this happen at a 6-month check-in where the executive was invited and said, this is not what I purchased. This is not what I wanted. I will pay for the product until the end of the year, but effective immediately, we are not using this product any longer. He was so upset about how the product had been implemented and felt that we did not hear him and what he wanted. And it's because the project manager didn't understand the goals. The project manager was not part of the sales discussion. So was implementing something that he wanted or thought was valuable, but no one thought about checking with the executive. And that's a really powerful lesson. So making sure that your executives are part of the journey, at least during critical events.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in that case, the instance you were giving, I mean, they're blamed to be associated with the people who worked for that executive because they had no idea what his expectations were. So, I mean, it also flowed back to customer success and sales because clearly they had misaligned. And I agree that initial kickoff call is really important, and not given enough attention. Really, it's sort of interesting. As in my career and working in that role, I developed this step where I would do if when we had a big contract that was signed and so on. His first call was to sit down and go through with the decision maker. Let's go through the process, right? This is what you start off. This is what you wanted. This is what you spec'd, whatever. This is what we proposed because of what you spec'd. This is why you decided to buy us because of these capabilities. This is what we're delivering, and this is what you should expect to have happen in certain timeframes. Because one of the things that's, I think, people overlook is, that especially in competitive environments, is that your decision makers have taken sort of cherry picked the best of what they've heard from everybody, and they think that's what they're getting, right? So if they're talking to 4 vendors, in their mind, what they think they bought from you is really the best of what all 4 companies are talking about. And if you don't reset the expectations right at the time of or right after the time the decision's been made, but when you're beginning implementation, to your point precisely, is you're going to have this misalignment that's just is fatal.
Yes. And I've been on the other end where I've had buyer's remorse. And I've worked for companies where they purchased a platform, rolled it across the company, and then had such buyer's remorse because there was so much backlash about the product that it was pulled out. So you really want to make sure that there's that alignment early on.
Setting expectations, I think, is a huge part of the role. So, but I still get back to this issue before. It seems like for me, if I were managing a customer success team and I wanted to look at what's happening with the big customer, along the way, I don't want to be waiting to month 10 to sort of look at this. It seems like whether it's usage or whether you're doing, customer satisfaction surveys or, what are those sort of key metrics that are on my dashboard that I'm looking at for these big accounts?
NPS is widely talked about, and I do believe that it's a
net promoter score for people.
Yes, exactly. Net promoter score, customer satisfaction scores after a support interaction. Those are all very important if your company does something with the data. So I worked on a large project. Fortune 50 company hired me to do an NPS project with them across 56,000 customers. And I called 100 of them globally. And I presented the data to the executives as they were deciding what to do with the product and the customer experience in 2019. And I told them as a critical key findings, hear the voice of the customers. If you don't do something with this data, then it was a waste of money and time, right? So you actually have to do something with it. If you're actually doing something with the NPS scores and listening to the voice of the customer, then those metrics make sense. The other one is time to value, time to first value, incredibly important. And if you don't have a good kickoff call and understand, well, what is value for them? How can you measure it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, but measure being something quantifiable, or measure being, in something more intangible?
Absolutely quantifiable. So the pushback I get is, well, we've never measured this before. That's why we purchased your product. And I tell them, all right, well, let's make an estimate. Or are we able to look in your database, for example, and see how many support interactions you had over the past 90 days? Let's use that as the foundation so that we can start tracking in 90 days, in 6 months, in 9 months, to see, is there a drop in support tickets if this is something that is really important to you or a pain point. And if you're able to show those first values, I believe that's really important for showing that return on investment. So that's another one, being able to identify what's really important to them and then measuring against that.
So what do you see in terms of, because I've experienced this quite a bit, is a disconnect between the decision makers when they make the decision on the front side, and then you put it in the hands of the people who are the day-to-day users, and completely orthogonal to each other in terms of expectations and what they hope to get out of it. Yeah, as customer success, how do you reconcile that? Because that's hard to do oftentimes before the sale, but suddenly somebody's using a tool. It's like, well, I don't want to use this. This doesn't help me in my job, and I'm being managed on doing X, Y, Z, or being measured on doing X, Y, Z, and this helps me with ABC. And why am I using it?
Right. Well, I will say that there are ways to make sure that you're always in front of the executive if they are not on the calls, and there's a way to get a pulse. So, companies do this. For example, if you are an administrator of Slack, you get a monthly email. Whether they're for executives, I'm not sure. I don't see a call to action, but they're on the right path. Same with Grammarly. They're constantly every month telling me how many unique words I used, and they're comparing me to benchmarks of other users. That's fantastic, but what do you want me to do with this data? So it's important, if you're going to be reaching these executives and expecting them to open up the emails and tell them, then you need to tell them why they should care. Why should they open that email? And what should I be caring about by me purchasing your product? So if you're able to tell me that the things I care about are happening, like reduced support time, increased usage of the product, for example, then that's important. Then by all means, send me the email. But if it's just to tell me that 50 new people signed up, or we had 3,000 interactions, who cares? How does that impact my business? So that's why I really think that's important. That's just one example, because I laugh about it when I get these emails every month. I'm like, who cares?
Well, right. And so part of me says, when you talk about those examples in particular, it's like, well, why, if I'm a Slack user, let's say, and I've got a big implementation, I should be getting that data from my internal people. Why am I reading this email? I should have the same metrics, right? Shouldn't my internal people be saying, yeah, we've added X number of people to Slack, and we're doing these things with it, as opposed to having Slack tell me, yeah, we had 3,000 interactions, or 10,000 messages passed through, or whatever.
Right. Well, I think sometimes if you're relying on your day-to-day users to get this data in the right hands, you may not necessarily get the data to the people that really matter, that should be seeing this. And that's why I encourage companies to invite the executives on those critical event check-ins, for example, or to send meaningful communication that they may care about. So like, future trends, how will it impact their business? What future things they should be thinking about? Or if you have a new product coming out, well, how's it going to impact my business? Why should I care? I think if you're able to communicate with them, whether it's right in product or through an email that's quick to read, I don't want 3 reports. I don't want to have to go somewhere else and click elsewhere. Show me in a very quick video or in content that I can easily read on my mobile. I think that's critical in reaching the decision makers.
Interesting. Yeah, I started thinking about that because it's my goal is to enable the people I consider sort of the key movers and mobilizers internally to be able to present that information accurately to the executives on their side, because quite frankly, they had more credibility about it. And to me, it's like it would be a red flag if I thought the executive thought I had more credibility than his internal people on these issues. And that itself would be, I said, very problematic.
I will say the way that I've been successful in getting executives to come to a meeting is to explain my day-to-day user. Here's what the meeting is going to be about. And I want to make sure that your executive understands what we're doing together, why this partnership matters. And during that meeting, making sure that your day-to-day user is the hero in the story. Right. So if you make it about them and you make them look good and show the impact on the business, it's very compelling for that person to bring their executive to the table.
I agree. Great point. Yeah. Actually, we're going to wrap up on that point because we're at the end here, but we could do another episode, just more on customer success, just on all the questions I had to ask you. So we'll do that at some point. But in the meantime, tell people how they can learn more about you and what you're doing.
Sure. So I am a partner at Winning by Design, and I focus on customer success and account management, assessments, designs, and executive coaching. And you can reach me by my first name, Emilia, at winningbydesign.com.
Okay. And that's, why don't you spell Emilia?
Sure. It's EMILIA at winningbydesign.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, Emilia, it's been great to meet you. And I said, I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for this week. First of all, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank my guest, Emilia D'Anzica. Join me again next week as my guest will be Juliana Stancampiano. She's the CEO of Oxygen and author of a book titled Radical Outcomes, How to Create Extraordinary Teams That Get Tangible Results. Juliana and I are going to be talking about the role of education versus training in building and enabling the sales teams of the future. So be sure to join us then. And along those same lines, before you go, don't forget to check out The Sales House. It is your all-in-one sales growth education for B2B sellers just like you. Visit thesaleshouse.com. Thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.